Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Open Mic Comedy Podcast. I'm your host, Mark. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. This podcast is here for everyone on the open mic comedy circuit, whether you're a comedian, an MC, a promoter, a tutor, even comedy fans who enjoy spending their times in pub basements watching the possible stars of the future. If you're thinking I could do that, then this podcast will give you the inside track on what to expect on this crazy circuit. Today's guest is a Max Turner finalist for 2024. He came third in the G&B All-Star for 2024. Most recently completed his 5 minutes at King Gong at the Comedy Store. He helps run his own night. He reminisces about the odd bit of homophobic abuse from the past. Being an ex-Jehovah's Witness, there only seems to be one way I can introduce him. So here we go. Knock, knock. Who's there? It's Chris Ford. Hello, Chris.
Hi, thank you so much. And very good introduction. Appreciate that.
I had to get Knock Knock in there somewhere as well, because also for listeners, Knock Knock is the name of your actual show, isn't it? Your actual event.
Yeah, that's the a night that I run with Gracie M and Martin. We run Knock Knock, so yeah, you got it.
So come on then, how did it all start? How did your comedy career start? Where did it begin?
I feel like I had two starts. So in 2017, I fell off my bike. So I work as a nurse, and I fell off my bike, fractured my shoulder, and I couldn't work for 3 months because I had to have surgery, and obviously nursing is a job that you need your arm.
Yeah.
It helps. So I had 3 months of time where I was, obviously the first month, etc., I was in pain, but like I had sort of 8 weeks of recoup, and I thought, what am I going to do with this time? I'm never going to get this time again, where I'm not working for 2 whole solid months. I obviously had pain, but there was some stuff that I could do. And that's sort of when it had been in my head that I'd quite like to do a bit of stand-up comedy, sort of lurking at the back of my brain. But I think when I had that time off sick, I was like, oh, perhaps I could explore this a little bit, because that's something you can do in a sling. And I signed up for a course. So this is obviously 2017, so sort of 7 years ago. My reason for picking the course, this is how little research. The reason I picked the course was it was near where I lived.
Yeah.
So I did no research whatsoever, and just was like, oh, that's in New Cross, that's around the corner. I'll nip down there. So I did I think it was like 6 weeks, and it was run by this guy called Harry, and he was very much like an old school jongleurs type comedian.
Yeah.
And so his teaching was very much sort of a bit of old school stuff, and it was quite. I didn't really get a lot of advice around stuff like punching down and all that, because it was quite laddie. The course teacher and what we were learning, and then I did like a little showcase, and I really enjoyed it. And then I sort of pursued a little bit of open mic after that, but I was absolutely crippled by nerves.
Okay.
And it was overwhelming. So I think I did about 10 gigs, roughly, and I did have I sort of won the plastic crown at Cav and stuff, so reasonable success, and I was getting a little bit of I was getting laughs and stuff, but the nerves it was off the chart. I wasn't sleeping the night before. I was vomiting before going on stage. When you have to obviously the bringer, so my bringer would be there, but I couldn't talk to them because I was so nervous. I couldn't make any conversation. So these poor people coming along to watch me, like, oh yeah, come do some comedy, and I'm like literally just staring at them thinking I can't do this. And I also fell into the sort of trap, as I thought that I had to write a new set every time I went, because I got a bit in my own head about it, and I was like, oh god, what if the people have heard the joke before and they won't laugh? And it all became it all became too much, to be honest, because I think the nerves got too much. And then my husband was like, what are you doing? Like, this is meant to be fun, and you're not sleeping. If the week before a gig, I just would hardly sleep because I'd be so anxious about it. So anyway, so I kind of had to stop it because it was just he was right. I was like, this isn't fun.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because the whole the nerves and all of that kind of stuff when you're doing it at the start, I find that I'm fine sleeping beforehand. I don't generally get nervous. I get nervous sort of like about half an hour before I know I'm going on, and the
Yeah.
butterflies kick in, and I go into that zone as well where I try to talk to people, and I might come across as somebody perfectly normal talking to somebody, but
Yeah.
my brain's going, I cannot remember a thing you've said, and I have no idea what I'm gibbering on about because my brain's
Exactly.
gone. Do not take this set out of your head
Yeah.
in case you forget it. And you keep going around it in circles and you kind of like going round and round and round and round. And you get to the point where you're like, it's got to be in there somewhere.
That's just, I mean, I'm terrible. In them days, I was just terrible company because I was like not really listening to anything anyone said. I was sort of thinking I was laughing at the right places, but
Yeah.
you know, it wasn't very good company. And actually, interestingly, when I very first in 2017, my first start, the 10 gigs, I actually got put off by the audience laughing. I was like, because you know when you practice it, I was practicing so hard, like I really memorized that script in your bedroom, and
Yeah.
then went and did it, and I was like, excuse me, guys, can you stop laughing? It's really putting me off my stride.
Yeah. You don't, no matter what practice you do, I guess this is one of the only industries really where you can practice live in front of somebody. That's the only practice you'll get because you don't know laughter breaks if you're lucky to get them. So you don't know how they're going to affect you because you get to the point where somebody laughs at a joke and then you laugh at them laughing, enjoying your joke, and you laugh at your joke because you thought, yeah, I've made somebody laugh, and then your brain goes, shit, what
What's
was the next
next?
bit?
Yeah, exactly. So I was finding that I was like, I was getting this, you know, I was getting a good reception, and then I was like, guys, can you just like shut up? I'm actually working really hard here. Can you please be quiet? You're so rude. Yeah, I sort of had to knock it on the head at that point. It wasn't fun anymore, and I kind of then just threw myself into my work, my job, and life happened, and
Yeah.
pandemics, and but what I would say in 2020, I started a new job in nursing. I was reasonably senior in nursing, and I got a job working as the A&E matron, so it's quite reasonably senior in nursing. But
Yeah.
what I found with that job was that every morning we used to have this thing called a handover, and you're sort of handing over the shift, but
Yep.
we'd have on duty roughly about sort of 25 nurses plus doctors. You'd have an audience of like 50 people, and every single morning I had to talk to them. So I'd have to be like, welcome to the shift, and you know, these
Yep.
are the notices, and I used to find I was getting, obviously when I first started I was getting quite nervous, but then after a couple of years I was like, sort of found I was chucking in little jokes, and
Yeah.
I just wasn't nervous at all. And then I think that was, and I was like, oh, I've got a captive audience of 50 people here. I'm going to try. So obviously I wasn't like doing a set, but I think
No.
what did happen is I got used to talking to large groups of people, and
Yeah.
the nerves. Well, that's how I think I conquered the stage fright, by just exposing myself in that environment every single morning.
Yeah. It's the that's the way I found it as well. Is that I was never sure if I could do this or not, and then I look back and go, well, you have stood up in front of 150 people before doing a training course at work,
Yeah,
and you've attempted to make it a bit of fun as you go along, and you're walking around for 3 days on end talking to these people in front of this
yeah,
massive classroom, and you're doing this piece of work, and you kind of go, well, maybe I just could.
yeah. That's just it. And I think that was when. So the idea was like, oh, I'm talking to all these people every day, and maybe the nerves won't be. So then December. So I've been 18 months in this current. So I've been sort
Okay.
of going 18 months. So I did a course at Hoopla, which showcased in not December of last year, the year before.
Mm-hmm.
So December
2.
2022.
Yeah.
So
22.
I kind of feel like January of last year feels like that was really when I started.
Yeah.
Did my showcase, and then my first gig after that was G&B, and I found that it was really interesting doing the showcase because are the nerves going to be there? I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was like, is that horrible, crippling stage fright going to be there? And it was gone. And
Oh,
I
excellent.
was normal nervous.
Yeah.
I was like, it was like a normal level of like, oh, I'm getting on stage, and like a little bit of sort of fluttery, but
Yeah.
that sort of crippling feeling had completely disappeared. And I think that was definitely down to my job, really.
Oh, that's good. It's nice how the life outside of comedy can affect the life within comedy in a positive way.
For sure. And I've thought a few times, it's like, I wish I'd got into this when I was younger. I wish I'd done this when
Yeah.
I had youth on my side. And I couldn't have done it when I was younger. I didn't have the confidence, and I didn't have the life skills that I've got now to be able to do it. So it's a moot point, like, because I couldn't have done it.
It's the point that I look back on my own thing, because I live outside of London. I've got a family, 2 grown-up girls and stuff like that. But there was a period where I work on like a contract basis, and I had a contract in London for a year and a half, 2 years. So rather than traveling in and out every single day, I rented a flat in central London just to make it easier for me to get to and from work and then go back home at the weekends. And if I know now, if I knew then what I know now, if there were open mic nights and stuff like that,
Oh yeah,
I would have been doing them, because I was there in the flat on my own. I had nothing else to do.
all them evenings. Yeah.
I would have been out every single night trying to do it. But and I wonder where would I be now if I'd had all those years? Would I still be doing the same 5 talking about crap? Or would
Yeah,
there
I
be
think
progress?
it's like the that sort of thing about, I wish I'd done it when I was younger. And like I do go around, I'd go to that thought sometimes, and like, there's no way. And I was too busy. Like, I was too busy just pulling my life together when I was in my 20s and 30s. There's no way I would have been had the discipline to go to open mic comedy. I was, you know.
Yeah, I guess I never really knew it existed until
Yeah.
I've spoken about the story before. It's just I went to see I got a friend of mine. He's got one of those mates that you see probably once every 2 years, maybe every year if you're lucky. And he lives in Newcastle, so I'll go to him or he'll come to me for a weekend, and we'll combine it with a comedy of some kind. And we went to see. I went up to him a couple of years ago to go and see Dave Gorman do a show. We've both seen Dave Gorman before in other places when we've hooked up. And it was like, well, I'm coming to Newcastle. I'm not coming for one night, so I might as well come for 3 days. Let's just have a mooch around Newcastle, see what else there is to do and whatever. And I said, what else is there to do? And he said, I don't know. I don't actually live in Newcastle. I'm like, oh, but you live up there. He's like, yeah, it's not the same thing. It's like, okay. And I found the Stand, and they had a Raw night. And I was just like, I have no idea what that is. It's a £5. I booked 2 tickets. We're going. And I think it was actually, I'm not sure if it was an open mic night or if it was actually a showcase.
Oh, okay.
And you see 12 people get up and do their bit. And they had a main headliner. They had a guy called Gavin Webster. If you've never heard of Gavin Webster, look him up. He's hilarious. Very northern, very Geordie, and very, very funny. A little bit old school, but very funny. And I just turned to my mate and went, I reckon I could give this a go. And he went, go on then. I was just like, oh, no. I can see where this is going. And yeah, the ball rolled from there. I never did it on the night, but it got my brain thinking, how do you do it? And,
yeah, it's interesting you say that, like, about not really knowing it existed. I didn't either. But so I like you mentioned at the beginning, I was brought up a Jehovah's Witness, and I was a Jehovah's Witness till I was like 24. And I've got to say that my family were particularly devout. So not all Jehovah's Witnesses, but my family were very, very, very devout. So like, my stepfather was like the overseer of the congregation, and so I had no exposure to any form of stand up. I didn't really know it existed. Obviously, you knew that there was comedy. The only comedy that I was really exposed to was sort of sketch stuff on TV. So French and Saunders and Victoria Wood. I mean, there was periods when I was growing up that we didn't even have a TV. So like, I had sort of no experience of like pop culture or anything like that. It wasn't really until I was probably in my 30s that I started to be a bit more aware of stand up.
Yeah.
But I still thought that people just went up on the stage and started talking. And they would just happen to be funny. I was like, oh wow, look at this. Just get up
Yeah,
on stage. I didn't realize. I didn't think it was a script, and people still don't.
no, it's an odd industry in that the grassroots of it aren't, unless you're in a city and around that kind of around those type of areas. I can imagine you just don't know they exist, because when you see like a comedy night that's actually an open mic night in a town outside of London, for example, and they put it on once a month, you've probably got people going, "Oh, it's a comedy night. We'll go and see that."
Yeah,
But they don't realise that they're going to see grassroots comedy. They
yeah,
think they're going to see a semi-polished kind of, oh, this is kind of a really good, these people are professionals, not
yeah.
realizing that these people are not professional. They've just turned up in this
Just giving
little
it a go.
town, yeah, and trying something. But they go, oh, it's a free night, we'll just go along and see what's what, because they don't have that in their area. Whereas I guess in London, you
Yeah.
just go, right, I can go to any number of nights on any day of the week and I can see anything.
And that's why it's so hard to get an audience in London.
Yes,
Because why
I
would
do
you come
believe
to
you're
my
right.
little open mic night when you could go to the comedy store?
I can
I mean,
imagine
I
that
know
is a
why,
problem.
but it's just the perception of,
Yeah, I mean, if you see on a bill, you see somebody that you've seen or heard of on, even if it's on social media, let alone TV, you go, oh, okay, that name's familiar to me. But then when you put people on there that aren't familiar to people, to the wider public outside of comedy,
yeah,
I can imagine it's quite hard to get an audience wanting to come along.
it's so hard. That's the hardest part. And I think it's interesting you said that about, there's names that in the open mic or semi-pro or even, circuit that we know that are just brilliant acts. But it means unless for Joe Public, unless you've been on eight out of 10 cats, they haven't
Yeah,
got a Scooby.
yeah,
So I could say, I've got Tash Klusky or whoever it might be that's just brilliant comedian, and I say to my mates, and they're like, unless they've seen you on TV, then they've never heard of you.
yeah,
Um, so it's tough. I'm like, no, this is going to be a really good night. These comics are really good, and they always have a good time. But
yeah.
it's just difficult to like get the audience to a comedy night, which is why we don't run it very often. The night that I do run which is why we do it so infrequently.
Yeah, I was talking to one of the previous guests, Dominic Burrell, who runs Comedy in Your Eye, and he mentioned to me that they deliberately don't put on the lineup who's there. They just say it's a comedy night.
Yeah,
So people go along for the surprise, and there'll be things like we've had
that's a good
so
idea.
and so before, had so and so before, but listing out, as nice as it is for us as gig goers to put our little posters out with where we're going, what we're doing, and a little bit of a memory kind of thing,
Yeah.
for the promoter itself to not put it out possibly means you get more people coming in, because they don't go with that perception, I've never heard of them. They go, who am I going to see?
This is true. That's a really good idea. Yeah, it's hard rustling up the audience. We've run it like 5 times and we've sold out every time, but my goodness, that was a hustle. I'm like going around work like, come to this night.
So you've created Knock Knock comedy with Gracie.
Mm.
So it's quite a quick transition from starting out in January, in effect 23, to now. I guess you must have started Knock Knock at the end of 23
Yeah,
or beginning of 24.
this is my problem. I sort of I overestimate my own abilities. So like, I think it was at the end of the course that I did. Nick Hall was the tutor, and he was like, "Oh, you just need to get out there and get gigging and practicing." And he was like, "Oh, just hire a room in a pub with your mates and get a bucket." And I was like, that sort
Yeah,
of stuck with me a little bit. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, perhaps we could do that." And also I think I was also getting trying to find gigs and messaging promoters, and sometimes you hear back, sometimes you don't. And I was like, perhaps I could just do something myself. So I sort of floated it with Gracie, and we were like, yeah, let's do it. And I think our initial thought was, we'll do this a one-off, and then we were like, oh,
yeah,
that went really well. But we've sort of stuck with about 8 weekly now because, like I said, I don't want to put on a night which is nothing against bringers. I absolutely understand why we have to have them in London, but I didn't really want to do that. I thought so. We managed to get a decent audience, but like I said, it's the hustle. It's the hustle for it.
I can imagine
It was
quite
about
difficult.
6 months after we did our first one in May, so I'd been doing comedy about 5 months. This is how deluded I am.
Wow.
I just did my sort of 100th gig like a couple of weeks ago, so I was saying this to a friend of mine the other day. I was like, we're really new. Like, I'm still new, really learning. But I remember when I first started, the thought of 100 gigs was like, oh my God, that's someone so experienced. And now I'm like, 100 gigs. I'm like, I know nothing. I literally know nothing.
Yeah, it's kind of strange when you think about it, and when you go, 100 gigs. Well, I remember putting out a poster on my Instagram when I got to 30 gigs, and I did like, 30 gigs, blah blah. Then I put the next line was 150 minutes on stage, and you realize how small amount of time that is in comparison. That's a 2.5 hour film.
Yeah.
And that's the amount of time you've spent on stage, but you've done it 30 times in those small chunks. It's weird when you try and break it down and kind of go, it feels like a lot, but in reality, it's not. And when you realize and you look around the open mic circuit, you see the amount of people that gig endlessly, doing four nights a week, 5 nights a week. You're like, wow, that's continuous.
And doubling up on nights as well.
Yeah.
No, I think the most 3 gigs a week is more than enough for me. Like, I can't, if I do more than that, I find that I'm not able to do my day job very well, and that's how I'm paying the bills.
Yeah,
it's the although I wasn't really exposed to stand up, it wasn't until I did the course though that I realised I was doing it. I've been doing it all my life. In a weird, you know what I mean? Like, when I did the course, I was like, oh, I know what a callback is because I do that in the pub sometimes, or I know what I love. It's nothing worse when you're like in the pub with your mates and you tell them a really good story about something that had happened, and then someone that was there goes, well, it didn't really happen like that. And you're like, this is the idea of the story. And this is what I mean. Like, I feel like I was doing stand-up all of my life. So when I actually did do stand-up, it felt very natural because I was like, oh, all of the things that I've always done, I can just do with a microphone in my hand.
Yeah. It's having that thing in your head, but also doing it on the stage, isn't it? They are so different. Once you get that comfort level, it's like I'm sure you've done the MCing stuff. When you're an MC and you're trying, the first time you do it, you go in with, I'm going to do this. I'm going to talk about this. I know somebody answers this. I'm going to say this. I've got this.
Yeah.
And then you do it. You get on stage and it's like, and everything's gone.
It's so
rabbit
hard.
in headlights, done.
It's so hard. MC, I think I'm a terrible MC. It's really not my. I'm just not experienced. I say I'm a terrible MC. I'm just not experienced as an MC. But it's tough. That is a real tough job.
I think there are different. There's very, like in comedy, there are very different comedians, but there are very different MCs as well.
For sure.
I mean, for me, I was told the night I did the MC was a night they run every month. And they said and after the guy that runs it and the bar staff that were there on the night, they all came up to me and said, you were really good. You were so calming. You just had the night flowing and nobody felt pressurized and stuff like that. And it was all calm. So because the person we had last month, he was brilliant, but he was like on steroids. He was on something. He was going nuts. And it was this whole firework display was going off inside this little room. He said, and then we came to you and it was like, and it was calm. I was like, yes, because I forgot pretty much everything I was going to say.
And it's so hard, isn't it, though?
It is. Even the basic rules of going, right, phones off, all of that kind of stuff. Didn't say a word, didn't say any of that. Didn't say any of that.
Forgot the ground rules.
Yeah, none of it. But it was kind of nice because it was an out of town gig, so they didn't need to be told that either.
Right, yeah.
So it was fine. Um, I'm doing it again in a couple of months' time, so I'm going to have to introduce that, but I want to try and introduce it into funny ways and stuff. You know, anybody's phone
Yeah,
comes off, it's coming up on stage and it's being answered, that kind of thing, and just having that bit of fun interaction rather than almost
yeah,
like a course is what I kind of did it as.
I think, yeah, it's a real, it's a totally different skill to doing a set, isn't it? And I
Yeah,
haven't really mastered it at all. Um, a lot of my comedy is basically talking about myself, stories from myself, stories from my childhood and growing up. And I find I it was really difficult when when I'm emceeing because a lot of my jokes are related to that.
yeah,
So it's hard if I'm like, oh, this audience work isn't really working. So I'll fall back on the old Christmas, I'll fall back
yeah,
on the old Christmas hit. But how do you get that? How do I sandwich in? Oh, FYI, I was a Jehovah's Witness. It doesn't really sort of. Whereas if you have comedy that's maybe a bit more observational or comedy
yeah,
that's slightly different to that, then you could maybe weave it into that audience work. But I found it really difficult to be like, oh, this audience was not working. I'll just rely on a joke. Oh shit, my jokes are all about being a weirdo, Jehovah's Witness. How do I get that in? So actually, one thing I did do was I sort of was like, I'm just not going to do the audience work because I'm
yeah.
just going to talk about myself, and that kind of went okay.
Yeah, I got to the point where I tried to get interaction with the audience at the start, and I got a little bit, but I didn't get to the what's your name, where you from. I just like, have we got a room full of locals? Give us, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
and that was kind of as far as it kind of went. And I tried to get some interaction with because it was actually on February the 29th.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was
Yeah.
a very unique day, and it was just like, right, okay. And I started with something like, you know what, this night is a for one night only. It can never happen again. Well, not for at least another 4 years. And on this night, what happens is that it's the day that the females can propose to men.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
if any females want the microphone later, come and see me in the break. And if any men don't want that, please come and give me 50 quid, and it won't happen.
Yeah.
And it was kind of breaking the ice with him, and it kind of worked. But it was, I don't know, it was a weird one, but it was so much fun.
Yeah, I think I just acknowledged my own inept as an MC, and I was a bit like I was a bit like, do you know what? You don't want me to talk to you, and I don't want to talk to you either. So I'm just going to talk about myself, and it
Yeah,
kind of went pretty well doing that. I know it's not. I know the rules are you have to ask someone where they're from, but sometimes that can just. I've seen MCs just like maybe less experienced, like might trying to find the funny in the fact that someone's from Staines and it's just not, and it's really tough. So I think it's better
yeah.
for me. I was a bit like, I just need to get more comfortable doing the MC rather than being like lol Staines.
Yeah, I took the opinion when I got on stage. I looked around, and it was the typical thing where people seem to be scared of sitting in the front row. The only people that weren't scared of sitting in the front row were acts and their families. So
Yeah,
it was like, I don't think I've got an audience here that's going to want to interact entirely at the start. I see how it goes later on. If we, when somebody's on, if they get a little bit of
yeah.
funny back from the audience, but that didn't really happen. They were all very like attentive and listening. It's like, we don't have comedy here. This is great. I want to
Oh,
listen. And it
nice.
was just like, yeah, okay, this is cool. This is what the night deserves. It doesn't deserve me being a dick going, so you do this, do you? Yeah, I don't know what that is either. And stuff like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
the MC thing is a lot of fun, and I do enjoy it. But I guess you get the chance to do it a lot more now with the own night. You can kind of do it and not feel pressurized because it's your night rather than somebody
Yeah.
else's night.
It's like the like the trouble I had was all of the times that we've sold out every time. It's been great, sort of 50 tickets,
Yep.
brilliant. But a lot of the people that were in the audience are sort of people that I know, like people from my work. The really good thing about my job is that my current role is a massive workforce. So like
Yeah.
the hospital has got, one of the last trusts I worked in has got like a workforce of like something like 15,000. So, it's quite a big pool of people that you can invite to a gig.
Yeah.
Not saying that all of them people know me, but there's stuff like internal intranet and
Yeah.
word of mouth. Oh, that that nurse does some stand up. So it's it's a really good way of getting. Also, what I found was a lot of the time when we've been doing knock knock, I'm like looking around thinking there's a load of nurses in here, and or there's a load of hospital work, and a lot of them I know them.
Yeah, I think the nursing community is a very open community for having a laugh as well, because of what they see on a daily
Yeah.
basis.
Oh, it's dark. Love a
Yeah,
bit of dark humour. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. A friend of mine was a physiotherapist within the NHS, working part of a hospital, and he said if you want to ever see dark stuff, just go to like a nurse's night out. It's just horrific.
Absolutely feral. You'll probably not wake up for 2 days as well. Like,
Yeah,
it's
he
absolutely,
did a
yeah.
shared house with them.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, absolutely feral them nights, I've got to say.
Talking of nights, then. So, one of the common questions I always ask is best and worst moments on stage. So, let's start with the worst.
Okay, the worst time on stage was, it came at a point when my ego was so big. I'd had some really good gigs, and I was like, I'm absolutely roofing it.
Yeah.
So it was a good point that I needed a really terrible night to bring me down, because I was thinking I was Lady Gaga. So I basically took a gig in Norfolk. It was the first time that I'd done a gig outside of London, and I'd had some really good gigs, and I was like, this is going to be great. And then I thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to book myself a nice little hotel. I'm going to just go away for the night, book a nice hotel. I'm going to absolutely smash this gig, and I will feel like I'm Jimmy Carr. And, you know, I basically got there, and it was a full room, about 100 people. And I looked at them and thought, fuck, it was like the Blue Rinse Brigade. Uh, like, they were all sort of 70 plus, and they weren't like London. Because and I've been proved wrong about this before, where like I did a gig in South London somewhere, and I sort of remember looking at the audience, and they were sort of a bit sort of boomers, and I was like, oh god, this is going to be awful, it's going to go down terrible. And they were
Yeah.
absolutely up for it, really, really up for a good time, and like got some filth, and they laughed, and it was great. So I have been wrong about this, but I looked at this audience and thought, this isn't South London old people, this is Norfolk old people. And I'm getting
Yeah.
on stage talking about, you know, Dom Top 69 and sort of gay culture, and I was like, oh, fuck. But I was too new. This was probably about a year ago. I was too new to be able to change my set.
Yep.
So I was a bit like, oh, I'm going to have to just do the set. I'm going to have to do the set in front of, in a nursing home. And I I was like, oh, I'm going to have to get up on stage. And the MC didn't do any warm up, and I was first on. So the MC literally was just like, "Hello, welcome to your nursing home, and we've got our first comedian." And then I was on stage, and I was like, "This tight five that have absolutely smashed it in London. Literally, it was a pin drop. It was nothing." And I was like,
Oh.
"Nothing." And um, I do a joke about J.K. Rowling and sort of, you know, how tables have turned. It's something along them lines.
Yeah.
And they really liked J.K. Rowling, and so they just looked at, and then it was like daggers. And actually, I'm going to get murdered by 12 nans. So cringe. And I was too new to be able to. I think now I could probably maybe look at the audience, maybe switch my setup a little bit,
Yeah.
or even acknowledge the silence now.
Yeah.
You know, I think I'm at a stage now where I could be like, guys, you're being really quiet now. Come on, what's going, like, and maybe I make something of that. But I was too new to be able to do it. It absolutely was horrific. But I keep a diary slash, not, it's not diary, but basically after every single gig, I write down what I've learned from that gig. So even if it was a horrible gig or whatever it is, I sort of still have to take something away from it. And I needed that gig to really stop me thinking that I'm something that I'm not, and I really needed it to bring me down a peg or two.
Yeah. That's interesting, actually. I've spoken to people that say they go into a gig with an aim on top of the making people laugh part. So whether it's stage positioning or how they handle themselves, or make sure they get one new joke in every time and stuff. I've never heard anybody start writing it down that they've done this, making a small diary of it. I think that's quite an interesting way of doing it, to be able to look back and go, what did I achieve?
Yeah, I do just even if it's just one line, it'd be
Yeah,
like, oh, this gig, so, or I will just, what have I taken away from it? Because otherwise, it's like, it can be quite disheartening when you go to an open mic and it's, you know, maybe no audience or whatever it is that's just maybe made the night not so good. And I had found that I was coming away from them being real a bit like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this? And then I was like, actually, no, you've got to learn something. You have to learn something. And even if you might think that was a terrible gig, you've still learned something. And I'll write that
yeah.
down.
No, I think that's I think it's a valuable thing to do. And I'm probably one of the worst for it. Is when I record pretty much every single set I do, but if it goes badly, I might never watch it back.
Yeah, I'm
But
not
I
looking at
should
that.
watch it. I should watch it back, and I should make myself watch it back and understand what went wrong. Whether it was just whether the joke is just shit, or whether the delivery wasn't there, or if it's just not the right audience for that, because that does happen.
Absolutely. Look at my boomers in Norfolk.
So on the positive side, then, what's been the best?
Well, I had to give this a bit of thought, and I feel bad for saying it, but I actually loved King Gong.
Yeah,
I absolutely loved it. It was I got it was the alchemy of where I was on the alchemy of the night for me worked. Um, I happened to be on the bill at a really good point. The audience were ready to have to be made. I think they'd had a few maybe that hadn't quite landed so well, and I think they were ready for someone
yeah,
to go through. So I kind of where I was kind of worked. Um, if I'd never been to King Gong, I'd never watched King Gong, I'd never set foot in that room before. And if I had, there is absolutely no way I would have done it. Because I was like sitting there thinking, this is insane. Like the audience were this what before I went on.
yeah.
People, it was wild. It was absolutely wild. There was a comedian got on stage and he was like, "I'm a primary school teacher," and then 300 people called him a paedophile. I was just like, "What the hell is this?" They were like, "Pedo, pedo." I was like, "Oh my god, what am I doing? This is insane." I wouldn't, if I'd been, I would never have done it. But in the end, then I sort of calmed down and I was a bit like, "This is a pantomime.
Yeah.
I might be the villain. I might be the hero, but it's a pantomime. Like it doesn't matter. There are amazing comedians who are getting on that stage, getting gonged off after 20 seconds. And I was like, it does not matter because it's a panto. And if I treat it as that and just have a bit of fun and just be like, I'm getting on that stage. And I had such a good gig. And it was, I think, also like having, 300, 400 people raw is like, I was like, oh, wow, this is the Kool-Aid. This is like,
Yeah, yeah.
that was insane. And to experience that was just something I'd never even dreamt that would ever happen to me. And then it did. And I was like, wow, this is just so amazing. I loved it. I also went in there being like, I have to be the most powerful person in this room.
Hmm.
Before I went on stage, I was like, I have to be the most powerful one. And I think that as a queer man, and it was a very sort of a very hyper masculine crowd. There was something about that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
A power trip in me that was like, yeah, right. I'm owning this, and I
Yeah.
didn't win, and Maple won. She was amazing and totally, but I did do well. Beat the gong, got to the final minute, and all of that stuff, and just loved every minute of it. Really, it
Yeah.
was so much fun.
I don't think you ever have to win the night to make it a success. It's just getting through the 5 minutes,
It's
especially
just
at a place like
electric.
that. I think we all have a love-hate relationship with the type of gong shows and stuff. And you realize that you see so many people that you know are amazing comics that don't get through the gong shows. and
Yeah.
that then justifies to yourself that okay, it's not a perfect fit for me. It's there for the audience to have a laugh and shout at you at.
Oh,
It's
it
not
doesn't
there.
mean it doesn't. I don't think it really proves anything as a comic, to be honest. I don't
No.
really. I think it if any, like, I actually come away because I sort of tend to be able to beat gongs. I don't normally win them, but I I don't really think it proves very much. It does prove that you're pretty punchy because you have to be dun
Yeah.
dun dun dun. I think that it proves that you can but storytelling doesn't really go down so well in them environments. I don't think it really proves whether you're a really great comedian or not.
No.
And actually, when I started to do sort of okay at gong shows, I then had that, oh my god, am I a shit comedian because I can only do little punchy fives.
Yeah.
Nothing really ever makes me truly happy.
No, you're always striving for the
Yeah, I'm
next
like,
bit of
oh no,
perfection.
I can only do little short. I can't do storytelling. Whatever whatever it is, we always look at I personally would always look at like a negative
Yeah.
side of it as well.
But no, I think I do think being able to pass King Gong in front of 300-400 people and having them all laugh back at you, I think it must be an amazing feeling.
Honestly,
Forget it's a gong show. Just having that
it,
number of people
it was
there laughing at
electric,
you.
and I had to it was really because I had to run out really quickly because it's quite a late night and I have to get up really early for work. So I
Yeah.
sort of run out of there, and I had all of this energy, and I was like, oh my god, I've experienced this thing, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I was like, fuck, I have to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning for work, and I was like, I just didn't know what to do. I'm like, I can understand why comics are drinkers because I was like
Yeah.
so. I got home. I said to my other half, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. And it was like, Chris, it's like 11:45, midnight. I'm trying to sleep. Who do you think you are, Lady Gaga? So I was like, yeah, I need sometimes to be taken down a peg or two. But I was like, it was like I'd done like like I've been bombing lines of coke all night. I was so hyped from it.
Yeah.
And then I had to get to work the next day and just be boring old.
Cool. So you've got a history with comedy competitions, or recent ones at least, like with the Max Turner and the G&B All
I'm
Stars.
always a bridesmaid. I never win.
But
I did win a G&B, their monthly competition, that
yeah,
was like, I loved that. It was wonderful to win something, but I tend to come second. That's my, I tend to get to finals, and then that's as far as I go. But I'm happy with that. I'm not taking on, I'm always happy to go to get to a final, etc.
yeah. I mean, I think just getting to the final is a hell of an achievement in the first place, especially when you look at some of the people that you go up
So much.
against, and sometimes it's easy to get lost in some nights because sometimes you might not stand out enough, you might not be that memorable to people because they've seen so many, I don't know, white gay men on the night, and everything kind of blurs into one.
Yeah.
And you get to the point sometimes where you're getting nearer the end of the night and people are getting more and more fatigued. And you're just like,
Yeah.
it's over with.
I know there is something definitely about billing and like where you are. I think that, I did a competition recently, and I was like second on, and the audience weren't particularly warmed up, and I knew that I didn't go, I didn't land it, and that's fine. Like, it's not all to do with billing. Sometimes it's to do with your own head and where you are in
Yep.
your own head as well. So yeah, like I said before, for me, the really, really good gigs, it's just the stars align, and
Yep.
for whatever reason, it might be the billing, where you are in your own head, whatever it is. Sometimes the really, really good gigs, it would just be the stars align. Sadly, it doesn't really happen for me in finals, though.
You did have some pretty stiff competition in the G&B All Stars this year,
Oh,
though.
it was so good. Like, there's so much talent out there,
Yeah.
and you know, I don't like it. I don't mind not winning the competition. Of course, I don't. But not winning it to people that are really good makes is better, because there's
Yeah.
nothing worse than if you don't win and you think, what?
Yeah.
you know, Kim won G&B and she absolutely roofed it. She totally deserved it, and I was so happy for her. So it would be worse if someone won and I was like, they just brought all their mates. That's not right.
Yeah. It's difficult with the old competitions in terms, especially if if you base them around bringers. It's just like
I can
we're not
understand. Yeah, the thing is, I can understand like Gag Race, which I love. I love the queer comedy, like the queer comedy club. It's such a nice gig. It's one of the gigs that I tend to use. I can just sort of go there, non-bringer, take my notepad up, and it's a really good sort of workshop. For me, it's like I can use it as a bit sort of workshoppy for jokes. But so Gag Race, they run every Friday, and if you win Gag Race, then you can get a spot on the Saturday night, and
okay.
which is fabulous. A really great opportunity. It's such a great night because it's a full room.
Yeah.
Now, the more mates you bring, the more chances are you're going to get onto the Saturday night. None of my mates are wanting to come to my comedy anymore, so it's like, they will. But I kind of need to save them I need to sort of save the gigs for the right ones. So, and I understand why promoters do that. They want an audience. You want an audience. So I totally, I've got no, when it's, they only won because they brought 10 friends. Well, good for them. They brought 10 friends. They brought an audience, perfect. And as a promoter, if I'm putting on an act on Knock Knock, I'm like, I want someone that's going to bring 10 friends.
Yeah. No, I understand it. So you've got an upcoming Edinburgh show as well.
Yeah.
So come on, what's the details?
So yeah, this is again me biting off more than I can chew.
I did wonder this as we've been talking.
I've just got this. So John Pape is a fantastic comedian, and he won the West End Old New Act of the Year competition last year, and got to know John. Brilliant. And he sort of floated the idea. It was like, maybe we could do like a split bill. And I was like, no, there's no way I could do that. And then when we sort of broke it down, it's like 50 minutes. And I was like, well, that's 25 minutes. And, 5 minutes of a little bit of crowd work. And then I was like, I think I've probably got 20 minutes. I think like it's not beyond, it's not beyond the realms of possibility. So he sort of floated the idea, and he was a bit like, well, we could do the PBH free fringe. And I was like, yeah, do you know what? Let's just say yeah. And then I was a bit like, I don't know if I can get time off work. That's going to be a bit tricky. And my boss came to one of my Knock Knock nights, and she was just like, oh my God, I loved it. It was so much fun. And I was like, she was like, whatever we can do to support this for you, then. So my boss is just really on board and really helpful. And then when I went to her and was like, I was thinking about going to Edinburgh for most of August, and obviously bearing in mind August is a really difficult time to get off work because everyone wants August off, especially the mums because they've got children. And she was like, yeah, it's fine, just take your annual leave, we'll work it out. And I was like, wow, okay, supportive boss helped. And then I was like, okay, so I've got the time off work and let's just go for it. So we're going to do a split bill. Not expecting, we were talking about it last night actually, and I was a bit like, I just want to get better. I'm not expecting anything other than to get better.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It gives you a consistent playground, I guess, for a whole month, just to do it, have it say I've done it and I've smashed through it, and I've made every night as good as I can make it. And I think this is the downside to when you only gig a few times a week, is you never get the chance. You don't always get the chance to build on what you did previously because it's never immediately fresh. But in Edinburgh, you're doing it. I assume you're probably doing it every single day.
Yeah.
And if something didn't work the night before, you can then change it for the next night and then literally assess how that went. Plus, you've also got the ability of jumping on open mic nights around there. You want to furbish a few new jokes and stuff outside of your show, just chuck an extra a 5 in and do something and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I totally agree. Like, it's just going to be, I'm sure the show that starts on the 3rd of August, the last one we do on the 25th, will look very different, and I'm hoping it will have improved. Just thought of doing, we're doing it 6 nights a week. It's got a nice location and a good time slot as well, so we're hoping it will. I totally know we're going to have nights with one person in the audience. You know what I mean? I'm sort of totally I'm not under any illusion that this is going to be easy, but I do hope that we'll learn. And like you say, I went up there. I've been to Edinburgh twice, but never as a performer. We just went to enjoy the comedy, and the thought that I'm even in the same space where I'm able to, do this is like it's magical, really. Never
So where
expected
is
that.
it? And
so PBH Free Fringe have organised the venue, South Side a bar, and it's at 9:30. So good time slot, and South Side is a pretty good location as well. So, like, I'm sure, I don't know, we'll see.
I mean,
just need to write the thing.
Yeah, you have loads of opportunities to experiment in open mics around there during the day as well. So I think it's I went to Edinburgh for the first time last year, and I made a beeline for a particular show that I wanted to see, and it was literally the first day. We got there on whatever 2nd or 3rd of August, something like that. And there were 6 people in the audience, and you're just like, but then you see the pictures as it goes along. As the days go, and you see them starting to fill up a bit more, and you kind of go, they're getting now what they deserve from that show. It was just that we were there on the very first day when none of the card machines worked, all of this kind of stuff, the teething problems, and because it was, I think it was still a weekday. There was like the schools were still, they were just kind of breaking up, and colleges, I guess, were gone, and.
Yeah, it's such a good vibe up there, but totally, it's not necessarily going to be an easy ride, I don't think. We'll see. What I loved about Edinburgh when I last went, though, is because obviously I'd been doing comedy since January, so obviously August when I went, and I got quite immersed in the open mic scene, which is great. What's so wonderful to just meet people that aren't nurses, but like nurses and doctors. I thought, oh wow, I'm actually hanging around with someone who's a graphic designer or whatever it is, but I've got really immersed in the open mic scene, and no shade on the open mic scene. You see a lot of comedy, a lot of it's not great comedy. That's fine. It's just part of the open mic scene. But then when I went to Edinburgh and I saw some really top-notch shows, I was like, oh, that's how it's done. It's really good to see some polished comedy from speckle in some really, really good nights from comics that you really enjoy. Because I think I was so immersed in this world that I kind of forgot that actually the pro world is an entirely different kettle of fish. And I think it's, for me, I just like try and speckle in someone that I really want to see so I can see how it's really done.
I find it, I think it's great because you can just mooch about, and you can find your way around, and you'll find something that, you're getting to see a lot of big acts that they're not always sold out. I quite a funny story. If anybody's seen my act and the David Baddiel thing, is we were in Edinburgh last year, and we had tickets to see a show at 9. We just finished one at 6. And it's like, we've got 3 hours to kill. What should we go and see? And was looking up on the board for where we was going at 9 o'clock. And they had like a 7 o'clock, and it had question mark. And I was like, I walked up to the girl who was outside. I said, oh, who's on at 7? And she said, oh, some guy called David Baddiel. I was just like, oh, there's any tickets left? She said, oh no, there's no tickets left, but we have we have extra tickets on the door as such. But it's the first come first serve, so you have to queue up. So it'd be like there's another 15 tickets on the door, so the first 15 in the queue get in, and the rest.
Oh, amazing! Okay.
And it was just like, okay, yeah. So she's never heard of David Baddiel. She's not looked at me and gone, "You look familiar." Yeah. And we queued up for it. And we were the last people to get in. We got the last 2 seats, and it was quite cool watching him on the stage doing his thing.
I imagine. Was it good?
It was really good. It was like a warm up for he'd done 3 shows over the last, I don't know, it must be 10 years now. All based around family and stuff like that. And I think he was touring them all, but I think it all stopped because of COVID in the end. But I think Sky have now asked him to record all the 3 shows. So he started using Edinburgh last year as a way of refreshing his memory over it with it again. So we went to see that work in progress, and actually, ironically, about a month ago, we went to see it being filmed for TV. So
Oh, and how
it was
has it
quite
changed a
good.
lot?
I the weird thing is that he's done 3 shows. I've seen 2 of them I've seen one of them is finished. No, 2 of them is finished, and one is work in progress. And then when we went to Edinburgh, we saw one of the finished ones, so he was refreshing his memory.
Yeah.
And the one we went to see last month was the work in progress one I originally saw. And I've seen how that's changed. And they're really good. They're really, really good. They're not political or anything else like that. But the latest, the one I watched called Trolls, Not the Dolls, it's all based around Twitter and trolling on the internet and stuff like that. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
definitely. When it's on telly, it's definitely worth going and watching it.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Even when I see, like when I've seen comedians doing work in progress at Edinburgh, I go like, wow, this is like blowing my socks off. This is work in progress. Like what?
Yeah, it's interesting when you see certain work in progress. I think I mentioned it before. Is I saw Jimmy Carr do a work in progress, the Pleasance in London, and he walked on the stage with Tesco carrier bags full of clipboards,
Right.
the jokes, and he'd stand in front of the audience and just read the joke out, and then gauge the audience, gauge the laughter, give it a mark out of 5, 10, or whatever, and then just move on to the next one. And then he may say something along those, okay, that didn't work there, but if I move it later on, it might work. And you can see him crafting it in front of, I don't know, 50, 100 people in this room.
Yeah.
And I guess a lot of these people have gone to this show expecting a Jimmy Carr show. You've got a Jimmy Carr show that's read from pieces of paper. And it's so, when you're that big, you can do whatever you want. And him having the ability to just go on there and go, I'm going to read this to you and you're going to laugh or not laugh. And I'm going to work out whether this is going to be any good or not. So it's work in progress is always quite interesting.
Yeah, I think also it depends where they are in the work in progress as well. So like where a pro comedian is. Like I saw Esther, is it Mandito? But she like literally had a book similar, reading, ticking off. But then I've also seen Sarah Pascoe, sort of maybe towards the end where she was just sort of practicing. So you kind of depends where people are in that journey between there's the physical, this is the first time I've said it, I've said it loads of times before, I just need to get the landing quite right. So I love it. I love it. And it's really nice to see also pro comedians. Like I saw Sarah Pascoe with like written all over her hand, and I was like, okay, they all do it. I don't feel quite so bad now.
But that's the thing I always come back to Jimmy Carr thing, was that at least when it comes to some people going on with like a notebook or writing on their hand, they're trying to make it sort of semi-subtle. Jimmy Carr just goes, fuck this. You're just going to, this is warts and all. You're seeing this.
Own it.
He'd even go back and repeat jokes later on to see if they work better in a different part of the set.
Right. That's magic to have watched that.
Yeah.
That must really have been brilliant.
And you realise that what you create never has to be perfect, because it can probably never be perfect. There's always an improvement you can make.
I saw a big fan of Sarah Pascoe, and I saw her do the London Palladium. Filled it, sold out, and we had really good seats. And she had writing on her hands, and I felt, okay, you can sell out the Palladium, and you can show. And didn't notice it at all. It just happened to be that we were pretty close up, and it wasn't like she was but I was like, okay, like this happens to.
Yeah, I've said this one before as well, but if you watch one of Ricky Gervais' specials on Netflix, his plectrum is very clever. So he's got that plectrum that sits on the side of the stage where he goes and reaches for a beer. There's one particular angle Netflix got, which you could see a piece of paper was on top of the plectrum.
Wow.
So he's obviously
he's definitely got it written.
I'm assuming it's not word for word, but
of course it'll be like little reminders. Yeah.
The next chapter is this. The next section is this. So he goes and gets the beer, and he gives himself that little bit of 3 seconds to have a sip of the beer, possibly look down and go, okay, I can see it, and pretty much 90% of the audience can't see it. But this one angle on Netflix just caught it. And you just see this white piece of paper, and you're like,
Because see, that
I
is
don't
the
blame him
biggest
for
fear.
it.
That's the biggest fear for me is blanking, like having a total blank. Has it ever happened to you?
Yeah,
It's horrible, isn't it?
it's horrible. But if you never blanked,
Oh yeah, I've blanked. Yeah.
so I tend to I learned quickly was that I had to kind of improvise with it. I had to make it known that I'd forgotten.
Yeah.
And then I engaged with the audience with regards to, I made it 100% obvious I'd forgotten. I started walking around on stage in circles going da-di, 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 da, da-di, da-di, da-di.
Yeah.
And I'm going, it'll come to me in a minute. And I start doing it again and again. And I'm literally going round. And then somebody from the audience shouted out a line from that I'd done to try and prompt me where I was.
Sweet. Yeah. Yeah.
But they said the wrong line. They said it wrong. So I went back and said, no, it's not 25, it's 26. And then I went, and that means that, and it got a big cheer when I remembered it. It was just like, yay, we're with you. We want you to remember. We want to be entertained.
That's sweet, isn't it? The audience on board. I've seen it before where someone's blanked and the audience clap or cheer, and most people are there to encourage. And I think that's the nice thing about open mic is like it's, unless it's a particularly badly run night, most of the time, people will clap along or cheer you along. It happened to me once where I was mid joke and I literally forgot the pun. And I think it was a rule of 3 joke. So it was like did the first one, I did the second one, and I had told the joke so many times that I was like, it'd fallen out of my head. And the third one, I was like, and I said it, nothing come out. I was like, oh my God. And I think I made some sort of throwaway comment. I was like, and there is a third one, but I cannot remember what it is. And sort of made a bit of a joke out of it. Yeah. But that was horrific. But normally, if I do blank, it will be at the end of one joke that then leads into another.
Yeah.
And so the rhythm, so you've got you get your laugh, you're like, what comes next? Yeah. And then if it does happen, I'll normally just skip onto a bit that you do know, and then I'll come off stage and be like, oh, damn, that was my best bit that I forgot, or be like, oh, I really wanted to try that and I forgot it.
Yeah. It's that whole, but the thing is, I think when you own it, it then gives you the confidence to be free with it in the future. And you take away that, okay, I've forgotten it, but I've owned it, and I've got a laugh. I probably got more of a laugh out of forgetting it than what the actual joke was, because there's this thing where the crowd want you to remember, and it's that you've added so much tension into the room, and everyone's kind of like, oh no, please don't forget. And then when you remember, it's like, you pop that bubble, and it's just like, relax. He's got it. The guy's got it.
Yeah, I've done it before in like sometimes when it's a really boisterous room, or when it's a really loud room and everyone's really on board. And so when when I'm having a really, really good gig, sometimes I'll get almost a bit sort of overwhelmed with it all, and then that my mind will go a bit blank, and I'll just have to skip to bits that I know, because it can be quite overwhelming, can't it, when it's like really like a final or something like that, and that's when you really don't want to forget it.
Yeah. So okay.
Also, when you look at it though, when you look at the footage, when you think that I've done this before, I'm like, oh, I blanked on stage and it was awful and it was terrible. And then I look at the footage and I'm like, it's barely noticeable. Like for me, it felt like minutes and minutes, and actually, when you look at it, it's like a beat of a second.
Oh no, mine was a good minute. Mine was a minute of walking around the stage. It really was. It was a particularly friendly comedy night, and
good.
One of the when I finished, my set became 7 instead of a 5, and when I came off, the MC made a joke and said, "That's why we don't have a hard 5 minutes on everybody's time."
Oh,
and it was just that it was because they could see. They could see me not struggling, but going, and because you pick up that my set is a story, and if you don't get it all, you're not going to get it all. You know, if I can't get it all out there, and I've done it before, where I got to the end, I got to the very last punchline, and went, shit, this isn't going to make sense because I've not said a bit before. I went, bear with me 1 second. I'm going to rewind. And I literally rewound like 2 minutes of the set back to where I should. And that's that bit. And then I just went, and then I did like a fast forward and then I finished it and it then made sense. But then I had a few comics come up to me after saying, that was actually really nice the way you did it.
Oh, that's nice.
And you owned it and took charge of the situation.
That's the
rather
best way
than just going in and carrying on and going, well, we've now got a set that makes no sense whatsoever. Callback is pointless.
I've done it before where I've done a callback, but there's nothing to call back to because I didn't do the original joke.
That was exactly it.
I met at yoga, and it's like, oh, actually, I've not talked about yoga at all, so this means nothing. It's horrible, isn't it?
I think it's having the confidence to play and being in a room that's willing to let you play. I think is one of the most magical parts about being in comedy. I love it.
100%. Yeah.
So then, if so let's fast forward like a year and a half in the future. Edinburgh goes swimmingly well. You then sign up to a full-on agency, and then they come to you and they say, the BBC come knocking and say, we want you to do live at the Apollo. We want your 20 minutes on TV. But what walk-on music are you going to pick to come onto the stage to?
I've gone round and round with this. I think Lily Allen, The Fear.
Okay.
I absolutely love that song. It's very jaunty. Yeah. It's got like a real upbeat energy to it, which would fit with, because I'm fairly high energy, it sort of fit with my energy. Love Lily Allen. And there's also something about it. The whole song is about the song is actually about sexual pleasure for women. But anyway, there's something quite feminist about it as well, which I like.
Yeah.
I feel like as a man, when you say you're a feminist, it's a bit like it's a bit creepy. I don't know, something about saying that's it gets a bit icky, but I really like it.
Cool.
A male saying he's a feminist is a bit like creep.
No, Lily Allen. Okay, that's a new one to add to the list. They're always quite interesting to see how people go, whether they go for full-on blasting the music out loud and get everybody hyped, or bring the energy right down, and then when you come on, you explode, and it has different effects. And I do think walk-on music has a thing. It has a place in comedy. I sometimes I think there's some open mics that could benefit from doing it.
Yeah, sure.
I know there's a couple that do it. Like I did one at Camden in Comedy in Your Eye in Camden.
Yeah.
And the guys that were doing it, they played a little bit of music in the time from being announced to being on stage and holding a microphone. And I think that's always kind of nice, because there's nothing worse than walking on stage and you still got like 3 or 4 steps to go before you can grab the microphone and the clapping stops.
Yeah.
And you're kind of left there alone, and you start off with the hi, how's everyone doing, and then nobody replies, and it's just like
yeah.
Whereas having that little bit of music that keeps going until you grab that mic and you're on the stage and you say hello, you filled the room. You haven't there's not an awkward silence. Whereas I think some open mics could benefit from doing that.
For sure. I think it's if you're able to, it's great to do it. Also, there's something around having quite loud music before the show starts. Gets the energy up as well. Obviously the right type of music, but gets because then people are talking louder over the top of the music, which then lifts the energy up a little bit. Because if it's just a cold, quiet room, it's just much more difficult, I think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So on to a little bit of a technical thing. Your favorite or best joke, how you came up with it, and how has it changed, and how has it changed if it has?
Yeah, so my there's the two separate things, really, aren't they? My favourite joke, no one ever laughs at. I love this joke, and it's never really landed, but it's very specific. But it really made me laugh when I was writing it. And when I wrote it, I was like, this is gonna storm it. This is a brilliant joke. I'm laughing at it. It's gonna be great. And then when I did it, I was like, dun-dun, and then it was a bit like, it didn't get quite the response I wanted. And every time I've done it since, it's never really landed. But I still do it because I like it. So and it's around talking about gay men specifically, and like the categories of like the tribes of gay. So it's talking about twinks and bears and otters and like yada yada. There's a line about bears and comparing them to dogs, and the line is sniffing around an alley with a bear is sniffing around an alley with a muzzle on. I've not really done the joke at all, but that's sort of the punchline. Never really lands, but I like it. So, so occasionally I'll still wheel it out, hoping that it will land, but it never really does. But I have got like what I call the Christmas hits, like the jokes that always sort of work pretty well, and that you kind of sort of wheel out, and I love them because they get a good response. And the one that I tend to finish on is around sort of being in therapy and being. I was thinking about, so the joke is actually about things that I've done. So to make friends.
Yeah.
So I've been to pottery making, yada yada, and the joke is around that and how I joined a gay running group, and it was just me chasing two lesbians around Hyde Park. Which is the punchline, and it always lands pretty well. How I come up with it was there is truth to it. I was like, oh god, remember that time I joined a gay running group, and then it's a joke, and it's a joke that I told in the pub with my mates. It's like, oh my god, I joined this gay running group, and it was just so cringe because it was basically me, and I sort of told the joke, so it was one that I'd been doing before I was doing comedy, so to speak.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that I say, it's stuff that I've said with pals to make them laugh, and that's how that one sort of came to life. I'm not very good at sitting down and being like, today I shall write jokes. Like, I'm not very. It's just that's not how my brain works. My brain will work. It will just something will pop into my head. So like, I'm trying to think of something around. So in the set that I'm currently working on, I'm trying to think of something around historic, and then my brain will be like, right, it's history, Stonehenge, and then I'll sit up bolt upright at 1 o'clock in the morning and be like, the punchline, and then get my phone out and be like, if ever I lose my phone, they'll think I'm a psychopath because the things that are written in the notes are just crazy. Stonehenge, whatever. So that I'm not very good at like, I'm going to write. So it will sort of like ruminate in my brain, and then something will come out at a random time. I'll be like chairing a meeting at work, and then suddenly I'll be like, oh, the punchline.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but and I know it's currently the trend. Everyone's getting diagnosed with ADHD. But my brain definitely leans towards that sort of quite all over the place, really hard to focus. But sometimes something will pop in that's a bit of a gem. Sometimes it'll pop in and I think it will be a gem, and then you do it and it's like, no, it's not.
No, that's brilliant. I love that. Okay, I think we're kind of slowly winding up this conversation, but I'm going to, as you've listened to a few episodes of this, you probably know what's coming up. There's a little section I like to call the Comedian's Challenge, where I challenge all the comedians that come on here to tell a joke from the Little Book of Shit Jokes by Sid Finch. Comedians get to pick their own joke, but they only get to pick it by a page number. And the idea is that they can then, I want them to tell the joke live on stage, record it, and tag us on Instagram in it. You can do it however you want. You can set the audience up to say, I'm going to tell a joke now. You must laugh at the end of it. Or you can try and worm it into your set. Do it however you wish. There's some examples on the pin page on our Instagram if you want to go have a look at a few of them. Some of them are quite fun. So if you're up for the challenge,
yeah, For sure.
I probably wouldn't do it in the Edinburgh show unless it turns out to be quite good. But remember the title of the book. Just give me a page number between 5 and 95.
I'm going to go for when I was at peak hot. I was at my prime when I was about 35, so I'm going to go 35.
35. Minute caller. Okay. Right. This is the first time I've read this. You got a bit of a long joke rather than a quick one-liner.
Gosh, okay.
Is a woman was circling a park, bouncing her bawling baby on her hip and saying, "It's okay, Emma. It'll be okay. Calm down, Emma. Everything is fine." An elderly lady complimented the woman on how well she was soothing little Emma. The woman replied, "My baby's called Jade. I'm Emma."
God.
I get the joke. I think you picked the worst one going.
Okay, I'm going to work with that's. I'm up for the challenge. I don't know if I get it.
Okay, I'll read it again. A woman was circling a park, bouncing her crying baby on her hip and saying, "It's okay, Emma. It'll be okay. Calm down, Emma. Everything is fine." An elderly lady complimented the woman on how well she was soothing little Emma. The woman replied, "My baby's called Jade. I'm Emma."
Oh, do you know what? Actually, that's all right. I can work with that. Yeah, I got it. Penny dropped.
Even my brain's now thinking, chasing lesbians around a park. I came across a woman called doing this, and I said, "You don't have to. You can be the elderly lady in the joke."
Yeah, I can definitely work with it. It's fine. That's not as bad as I first thought. I can work that into.
You might need to make the punchline a little bit more obvious, but
I think so. Yeah, I can work with that. Thank you.
No problem. I think. So, lastly, I guess, how can people find you?
So on the socials, Instagram mainly at fraudulent. Graciela and I run Knock Knock about once every 8 weeks, so we've got that in about 7 weeks' time, and there's an Instagram page for that at Knock 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 Comedy. Yeah, give us a follow. Not Round Tesco's on Instagram.
like that a lot. And I'll add all of those links into the description so you can easily find them after. And I'll also add a link to your Edinburgh page so people can find you there and hopefully purchase some tickets. So you can find us on Open Mic Comedy Pod on Instagram. We're on the W's at openmiccomedypod.com. If you've enjoyed this episode or any of the episodes, please like, follow, share, give it to friends. Anybody you think would be interested in it, please get them along. Jump on this train. It's growing fast. And if you're a comedian, please get in touch on Instagram and we'll try and fit you in and get you on. So thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you. That was so much fun. Thank you.
And until next time, I'll speak to you all very soon.